Welcome back to the studio. It is now time for Media Watch, and I'm joined for that by our very own James Creedon. Good evening to you, James.
Good evening, Catherine.
Now, no surprises for guessing what we're going to talk about. Of course,
Right.
the continuing drama surrounding the Murdoch media empire.
Absolutely.
But now you've got a slightly different take on it now. You're looking at the French press and
That's
what they
right.
are making of this whole affair.
That's right. For the first time, it's making headlines in France. We can see here scandal in the scandalous press. Presse à scandale, I suppose, would be tabloid press in French. Now, it's been, of course, the big news story in the UK for 2 weeks now, and it's been a big news story in the US, in Australia, wherever Murdoch's media is present. But France has been kind of slow on the uptake, if you like.
Well, he is largely dominant in the English-speaking world.
That's
Perhaps
true.
that's a
And
factor
perhaps
there.
now that they see this scandal perhaps spreading to the US from Britain, where
Right,
the
it's
FBI...
becoming a bigger deal, perhaps, in the eyes of the
That's
French
right. The
press.
FBI are now opening investigation into whether or not the News of the World, which was shut down last Sunday, whether their journalists tried to get information through wiretapping 9/11 victims. So it's an international issue, and yes. So in any case, they're leading on it. And just to kind of give a sense of what some of the coverage is, Le Monde has a profile of Rebekah Brooks, who of course stepped down this morning. There were calls, of course, on her to step down for weeks upon weeks.
Yeah,
and
for the last 11 days, definitely out, in the open, politicians saying she should have resigned. David Cameron, British Prime Minister, saying
That's
that
right.
too.
And the News of the World was shut down before she was shut down, if you like. And we've seen profiles of her in a lot of the British and US papers describing an unscrupulous woman, extremely ambitious, very domineering in many senses. And Le Monde has a lot of those same details in their profile of Rebekah Brooks. They say that she had very few limits. They call her La Reine des Tabloïds, the queen of the tabloids,
I think that's
ready to do anything.
A fair title.
Yes,
Rebekah
indeed.
Brooks
Reine des
there. I mean, she was
Tabloïds.
known as being pretty tough, wasn't she? And she edited the News of the World and the Sun in Britain, the two big
That's right.
tabloids.
That's right. And they talk about her very rapid rise up the ladder, starting as an intern at the News of the World at 21, before being editor at 32. In 2009, she was already the CEO of News International. And they give this moment to give a sense of her determination in Piers Morgan's memoirs. He's now, of course, the successor of Larry King on CNN, but also a former editor of the News of the World. He speaks about how one Saturday she dressed up as a cleaning lady and snuck into the offices of the Sunday Times before they were part of the Murdoch empire. Because Prince Charles' memoirs were being serialised by the Sunday Times, she thought, well, the News of the World should have that, clearly. So snuck in, hid in the toilets for 2 hours, came out, grabbed a copy of the book and whisked off to the News of the World offices and put in some details in her own paper.
That is dedication.
Yes.
That is really going out there to get the story.
Right.
Perhaps questionable methods, as we've heard about there, coming to light as well. Then.
So the figure of Rebekah Brooks, kind of fascinating the French media today.
Okay, what else have you got for us, James?
Well, also a little bit of smugness in the French papers. Libération, as I held it up earlier, it has it on its front page.
Smugness in the French press?
Yes,
Never.
a little bit of smugness. Never
believe
seen
you
before. And in their editorial, they're saying Murdoch's press has justified scandals in the past in the name of public interest, morality, the right to be informed. They dismissed French newspapers, including Libération, who thought that one's private life should remain private. The paper goes on to say their trashy articles demolished reputations, destroyed lives, and today there is a certain revenge in seeing Murdoch's group degraded by its guilty and illegal practices. That's a quote from the editorial of Libération this morning. Worth remembering too that the New York Post is one of Murdoch's US titles. They led with the headline Le Perv for Dominic Strauss-Kahn just days into that particular scandal, and a couple of weeks later they were calling the accuser in that case a prostitute. So a certain amount of smugness, yes, and revenge by the French press, who see, I suppose, their attitude of being a little bit more cautious, a little bit more respectful of privacy, as being vindicated.
Well, they do
in this scandal.
They do treat stories in a different way.
Yeah.
So
it's a very different news
different
culture, certainly
approach.
as regards privacy.
Okay, moving on. I think we're going to leave the Murdoch
Yes.
scandal to one side just for a moment and talk
Right.
about the French Green Party candidate for president, Eva Joly, who's been making waves with some remarks that she made about the Bastille Day parade, which was yesterday.
That's right. And she was on the margins of that parade, and she made this speech in which she said, I had a dream of a parade where it would be students and old people marching side by side. I had a dream of a citizens' parade instead of a military parade. So I think it was clearly a cleverly thought out strategy to ensure that she was kind of discussed and talked about, because it was obviously something that was going to create a lot of reaction, and reaction it did create. Even François Fillon, the Prime Minister, said that, the Green candidate doesn't have a very established knowledge of French values. Now that's a little dig at the fact that she is of Norwegian origin. She moved to France when she was 18, still has quite a detectable Norwegian accent. So what he's saying when he says she doesn't have an established knowledge of French values, I think it's fair to say what he's saying is she's not really entirely
she's not
100%
fully
French.
Which is a big dig there, really, in terms of her reputation heading up to the presidency, the elections for the presidency.
Absolutely, and there were worse statements that came out yesterday as well. One particular MP on the French side, on the right, not just the far right, said, well, why wouldn't it would be interesting to see how she would deal with being a hostage in Afghanistan, like the two French journalists who were recently released, Hervé Guéquier and Stéphane Tapanier, because that was an issue that showed the value of the French armed forces. Sort of ridiculous statement, really, if you ask me. And of course, Marine Le Pen, the head of the far right, she had to get her spake in as well.
She did, yeah, leader of the Front National.
That's right. And the presenter asked her what he thought of Eva Jolie's proposal to have a citizens' parade. So we'll have a listen to what she said.
Sure, why not have stalls and sell joints too? Listen, these proposals are shocking. It shows that Madame Jolie understands absolutely nothing about the close ties between the French people and their armed forces. I don't think it's legitimate to stand for the presidency when you've become a citizen so late in life.
So, quite a measured reaction there, as we've come to expect from Marine Le Pen.
Right. She's always very, very straight down the line, straight down the middle, doesn't come out with any extreme statements. In any case, just reaction to Eva Jolie herself has said, well, I won't be getting off my Viking boat. So she is, if you like, referring to the fact that she is of Norwegian origin and saying, hey, if I'm on a little bit of a crusade about this issue, you'll have to deal with that. And one other issue on that too, the Green Party, interesting, which she represents, she's the presidential candidate, came out last year and said exactly the same thing. They said that they thought that it should be a citizens' parade, not a military parade. No one reacted. So is it perhaps the fact that she is Norwegian French that made everyone react this year? Probably yes.
Interesting question.
Yeah.
Was this, though, simply a publicity stunt, her trying to get publicity ahead of the presidential race?
I think it's quite likely that it was, because she timed it very well. It was on the 14th of July, Bastille Day. It's a quite enough news cycle at the moment in France, not so in the UK, where it's all dominated by the Murdoch issue. And I suppose she knew that the political right in France would have to react strongly against this. The political left would try to take their distances. So it was a way for a candidate who doesn't have a very, very high public profile to create, I suppose, a political space for herself and to, identify herself with issues such as pacifism and, an anti-military stance. So yes, I think it was a publicity stunt.
OK, well, that's James Creedon's verdict. James Creedon here with Media Watch for us every evening here on France 24. Thanks very much indeed. Well, coming up right now, it's time for all the news that's been making waves in cyberspace. It's web news.
The crackdown on anti-regime protesters continues in Syria, and the government is also waging a virtual war against its online opponents. Social networks have been playing a vital role in the protest movement that has rocked the country for the past 4 months. In his most recent speech on the 20th of June, President Bashar al-Assad paid tribute to the Syrian Electronic Army, a group of computer hackers loyal to the Syrian government. On their website, the group has given a debriefing of their latest attacks. Attacks like this one carried out on Sunday against the US state of Maryland's official website, in protest against last week's visit of the US ambassador to Syria, Robert Ford, to the rebel stronghold of Hama. And according to cyber activists, these pro-government hackers are also launching regular attacks on anti-regime Facebook groups and posting pro-Assad comments or sending repeated reports against the page or profile until Facebook administration shuts them down. In view of these attacks, pro-revolution hackers are now fighting back. They've carried out a number of attacks against government websites in recent weeks, including the Syrian parliament. And in this cyber war, regime opponents can count on the support of a force to be reckoned with, the international network of computer hackers, Anonymous. Thousands of demonstrators returned to Cairo's Tahrir Square on Friday, demanding the army, which has been ruling the country since the fall of Hosni Mubarak, speeds up democratic reforms. And one voice rings out from the crowd. It's the singer Rami Essam, who has become one of the icons of the Egyptian revolution. When the uprising against the former regime began, this 24-year-old student left his hometown of Mansoura in the Nile Delta to join the protesters in Tahrir Square, taking his guitar with him. He began putting the anti-Mubarak chants to music, and one of his songs, called Leave, has become a revolution anthem. Following Mubarak's ouster on the 11th of February, Rami Essam, along with other die-hard protesters, stayed in Tahrir Square to maintain pressure on the new military rulers responsible for the transition process. But on the 9th of March, security forces used violence to force them out. Over 200 demonstrators were arrested, including the young singer. A few days after he was released, Rami Essam spoke of the torture he endured during his time in detention. The ordeal actually reinforced his determination to continue the fight. And with over 14,000 fans on Facebook, he's now the spokesman for an entire generation of Egyptians yearning for freedom and justice. The scandal started with a few blog posts from this woman. 20-year-old Guo Meimei had taken to flaunting her lavish lifestyle on Sina Weibo, the Chinese Twitter equivalent. She had also mentioned in her post that she worked for the Red Cross Society of China. Her comments left web users wondering where she got all this money from, fueling suspicions of corruption and embezzlement within the charity, which already has a tarnished reputation. The organisation came under fire in April when a web user posted a photo online claiming to show a restaurant bill for 10,000 yuan, so more than 1,000 euros, for a meal consumed by staff of a local branch of Red Cross Shanghai. The Red Cross denies any links to Guo Meimei, who ended up making a statement on her blog to say she'd lied about her profession. But this didn't stop netizens from investigating the rumoured ties between the organisation and the young woman. They claim she had a relationship with a certain Wang Jun, manager of a company which organises charity events for the Red Cross. He resigned a few days later. And so doubts have now been cast on the integrity of the organisation, with many web users venting their anger on discussion forums, saying they no longer want to donate to charitable organisations. The Red Cross has stated it wants to use this crisis of confidence to improve its functioning, and is promising more transparency in how it spends donations from the general public. Why make things simple when you can make them complicated? Canadian photographer David Dvere wanted to take a photo of himself, and so developed a Rube Goldberg machine made from objects found in his studio. After 7 months' work, memory cards, camera lenses and flashes now clank together in a 4-minute chain reaction, before a button is pressed and a photo is taken.